Hi friends, Carl here again with Calm Survival, and today we're looking at gas stoves, so butane, propane powered stoves as our staying at home backup cooking solution. Now, all of the stoves that I'm going to describe, what we're more looking at is the form factor. Once you know what form you want the stove to have, these can all be had in either butane or propane, and then with the particular style of valve and gas canister that you want to have. It's important to make sure that you look into all of those decisions so that you know exactly what you can get, exactly what's available in your region. So I won't get into too many specifics past what I've already done, because it may not be applicable to you at all. You'll have to make sure you're going to your local stores, find out what you can buy, and then you'll work from there. But the form factor is what is important. So we're going to start off with this little guy here. Okay, this one just happens to be an MSR Pocket Rocket 2. And this is what's normally called a canister stove, because it screws straight onto the top of its fuel canister. Now, obviously, this is about as small as they get. You can get them all the way up to commercial grade big wok burners that will sit on top of a 20 kilogram propane tank. So, as I said, form factor is, really what we're focusing on. The advantage to this style, it's obviously fairly simple. It uses the canister as its base, so it's going to sit just on its own. That can be an advantage for the simplicity, but also consider the height of our fuel can. So that big 450 gram fuel can, and all of a sudden this is getting very top heavy. You'll notice when you look at systems like the Jetboil fuel systems or Jetboil stove systems, they're very tall and narrow. That's to get them a lot of efficiency with their heating, but that does lead to some stability concerns. Now, for cooking a little bit once in a while, it's not that big of an issue. But remember, we're playing hard mode and we're thinking about at home. So do you want a tall, narrow stove? If maybe one of your, you got a kid who's going to be doing some cooking, they're 12, they're 14, they're more than capable of cooking at the stovetop. But is tall and narrow going to be necessarily good? So that can be a disadvantage. Next up, we have a remote canister stove. Okay, this is as you can see, it's a little bit bent. It's a cheap, junky knockoff of a Covia Moonwalker. We'll talk about brands and knockoffs and things like that on a later video. I think it's important to cover it. I'm just not going to do it today. So you can see a little bit bigger footprint. It's going to have a little bit more stability. The canister is going to sit off to the side, which can have some advantages. Keeping everything lower down. Again, just different sets of choices that are being made. Both of these first two run off butane, but there's no particular reason for that. It's just what they are. Then we've got our big 2-burner Coleman. Now, this style of stove can be a single burner or the double. Again, typically the larger ones will be running on propane, but you can get these that run on those smaller butane cans like we talked about, those fly spray cans as a single burner. I'm sure somebody makes one as a double burner. We did talk a little bit about how this style of stove can also be sometimes found in a liquid fuel petroleum. And And this obviously has a lot of advantages. It's going to be much closer to your normal cooktop. It's much more intuitive to use. If you're used to working on a gas stove, it's, very, very equivalent. Obviously some downsides. The bulk. This is going to take some more room to store it. It's going to take some more room to, just kind of move it around, have the footprint for it. But those are all compromises for you to work out in the entire matrix of how we're going to make these decisions. Okay, so comparatively, we've got, as I said, essentially 3 styles attached straight to the canister, remote from the canister, and then I guess, sort of more of a lunchbox style, large, flat, cooktop style of stove set. Really, that's about all there is to it. For all of them, advantage-wise, you're going to get a lot more simmer and flame control than you will with the liquid fuel stoves. You're going to have the visual indication of the flame so that you can gauge how much heat output there is. They tend to last through the fuel tank a lot more evenly, so you're going to be getting the same output consistently. You're not going to have to maintain fuel pressure. Once you kind of set it, especially if you're simmering, you set the dial, and then that's going to just keep going at that level. They can be a little bit more susceptible to wind, but there's always a mitigating factor. There's always some, you'll have some sort of a windshield that will either be built into the stove, or you'll just have to find a way to get out of the wind. But honestly, that goes with all stoves. Wind is just always going to play a factor. But we're not talking about being up on a mountainside. Okay, so in the scheme of what we're setting up, we just pick the form factor that's going to work best for us. That's just a quick look at gas, butane, and propane stoves. If you haven't seen the other fuel stove videos, go check those out. Make sure that you have a good understanding so that when we move to the next part of the series, you'll have all that background. All right, thanks for hanging out. I've been Carl. This is Calm Survival. See you again soon.